Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, part 3 and the finale of our router table cabinet build. Well, when we left last week's show, we had just finished cutting all of the side pieces for our drawers and had done all the finger joints. Now it's time to attach the bottom, and for that we're going to need some more 3/4 inch plywood. So for each drawer, what I have done is I have cut a piece of 3/4 inch thick plywood that is equal to the outside dimensions of each one of our boxes. We now need to cut a rabbet all the way around the edges that will be 1/2 inch wide and 1/2 inch deep. This will eventually house the walls of our drawers. So I'm going to take it over to the table saw, and using a dado blade, I will cut our 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch dado around all 4 edges of our drawer bottoms. And once you have that rabbet cut all the way around, we will just take the pieces of our box. It will sit right in that rabbet that we just cut, and we can assemble our finger jointed sides right to our drawer. Now, I'm not going to go through a glue up video of all of this. I'm pretty sure you guys know how to glue together finger joints, so I would bore you to tears if I ended up doing a glue up video. So I'm going to get all these drawers glued together, and then when I'm all done and they're glued, I'll come back and see you, and we'll start working on the drawer faces. Well, that would be all 4 of our drawers glued and nailed together. You have to remember, guys, that these are utility drawers. This is not fine woodworking. I did use the 3/4 inch thick ply at the bottom. The reason for that is the heavy stuff that's going to be in this. But the front is ugly. It doesn't match the rest of our cabinet. So for each one of these boxes, I have cut a solid piece of poplar. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount a handle centered on each one of these. Once I get the handles mounted, I'm going to glue and screw them to our drawer boxes here. And at that point in time, we'll give everything a really good sanding, and that should be it for the drawers. We can set them in place and move on to the cupboard doors now, both the 2 in the middle and the 1 off to the right. And that would be all she wrote for our drawers. We now want to make the double doors here and the single for here. And we need to make the doors first. And what I mean by that is they are going to be made in the same process or the same method as what we made the cabinet. The doors will be a sheet of plywood, but it will be edged all the way around on all 4 sides by 3/4 by 3/4 inch poplar. So I'm going to take some careful measurements around here for all of our doors, and I'll see you over at the bench once I get the pieces cut. So with all of our pieces cut for our 3 doors, all I'm going to do is just like we did with the plywood. I'm going to glue all of these to the edge and then use brad nails to secure them in place. And then we can move on to mounting them into the openings. For these doors here, I've left 1/8 of an inch clearance all the way around in order to give me some room to work. If it's not enough, the good thing about having the solid wood edges is a little pass or a couple passes with a hand plane can usually fix your problem. And with that one done, I will carry on and do the other 2. I just want to bring to your attention that if you're shooting in brad nails, keep your hands well away from where you're shooting. Don't hold it here and try to shoot the nails into it, because what's going to happen is that if that nail deflects, it's going to come up and it's going to come into your hands. So keep your hands well back on the other side. So I'm going to do these other two, and I'll see you when I get that done after I've given these all the good sanding. And there we have our 3 doors done. I'm going to give you a little tip here, and this is one of the only times you're going to hear me say this on the show, but when you glue these strips around your door and you clamp them and you nail them in place, you're going to have some squeeze out. Don't clean it up. I know, normally I say clean up your squeeze out, but in this case, if you have little tiny imperfections or little tiny gaps, if you take it over to the bench right away and sand it while the glue is still wet, the sawdust from the ply and from the poplar will blend together with the glue and fill in those gaps to give you a seamless look and really clean it up, almost like custom colored wood filler. So there you go. There's your tip for today. Well, at this point now, it is time to add the hinges for our doors. So I have some 3-inch hinges here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the recess in the edge of each door to accept our hinges, and then I'll transfer those marks onto our carcass, and I will chisel them out and cut them by hand. I'm not so sure that this is video worthy. I mean, it's cutting a little groove by hand with chisels and a knife, and then screwing your hinges into place. So once I get these 3 doors mounted, I will see you when that is done. Well, all 3 of our doors are mounted, and the only thing that I did a little differently here is I added a 1-inch strip to the back of this door, kind of the way that there's a flap on a double door of, say, a fridge, where you close the left one first and then the right one closes to seal up the gap between the 2 doors. I thought it would go a long way to helping the dust get sucked into the collector inside instead of blowing out the front. The last thing that we need to add here will be some magnetic closures. They will be on the bottom here of our cabinet and openings, 1 for each door, and that really, once we get those mounted, that will be it, other than going through and finishing up with a little bit of extra sanding. But other than that, I think we're pretty much done here. Well, here's the deal. I've taken all of my doors off, and the reason for that is, truth be told, I'm not happy with their mounting. As it turns out, the hinges were mounted a little proud of what they should have been, which caused the hinge side of the door to protrude out past the cabinet just a bit, but it was enough to bug me. And that amount apparently is measured in 1/16 of an inch, because that's how far out it came. Here's the problem. If I move it back 1/16 of an inch, there's not enough material left to be able to screw in, because it'll just revert back into the old holes. So what I've done is I've drilled out all of the holes to 1/8 of an inch and then glued a piece of 1/8 maple dowel in there. So it'll give me some wood to screw into, and all I have to do now is take the chisel, I'll shave these flush, and then I can remount the doors and be happy with their mounting. So I guess I'll see you when I get that done, and I'll show you what it looks like. Well, I now have all of my doors reinstalled, and the next thing that I want to do is magnetic closures. So I had a bunch of these little units here. I've got jars of them up that I've taken off of old shelves and old shop cupboards and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to mount these. One will most likely be up top here, up out of the way, but because of the ones on this side, there's nothing here to screw into. So these ones will be a little more durable ones that will be down on the bottom edge for each door. So we'll just adjust those, get them all in line and ready to go, and then we can screw them in place and be done. I'll see you when I get those put in. Well, I have one more magnetic closure to install and one more magnetic plate. And I thought, you know, there are some people out there that struggle with these, trying to line them up. So I'm just going to go through a quick little kind of tips on how to put these in. So the first thing you want to do is you want to line up roughly where this goes as far as front to back alignment. And then while the screws are still loose, close the door to where you want it, pushing gently at the end. And once you have it right where you want it, gently open the door and then tighten down your magnet. That magnet is now lined up, but some people have problems lining up this magnetic plate. If you look closely at the plate, it has two little nubs on them that stick out, and those are on the inside. They're on the side that goes towards the door. And some people think that they're to hold them in place so that they don't spin. And while that may be partially true and that may help, what they're for is for alignment marks. So if you place your magnet, or if you place your plate onto your magnet where you want it and how you want it lined up, and then take your door. Now you can do it like that, or you can hold it closed and give it a tap with a rubber mallet right here, just a light tap, you don't need a lot. And what that has done, I can see them right there. There's one there and there's one there. Those are registration marks now for your metal plate. And those little nubs that stick out will now seat themselves right there in those dents that they just made, and you can screw the thing in. Perfectly aligned with the magnet every single time, never a problem. So hopefully that little tip has helped you out. And with that, our magnetic closures are all in place. While putting in the doors and the magnetic closures and the hinges and all that, I noticed something that kind of bothers me here, and we're going to have to fix it. And what that is this power control right here. The JessEm control box, as much as I like it and as much as I like where it's mounted here, I don't like the sag it has to it. You can see there that I can shift that up just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a careful measurement of the distance here. I'm going to cut a piece of poplar. It probably doesn't have to be very wide because there is an outer ridge here that sticks out further than the body. So it will probably be just a little bit wider than what this is right here, this little rib. And I will glue it and attach it to the back, and that will help to support the control box and keep it square to the body of the router table. It's on there securely, it's nice and sturdy, and the whole 9 yards. There's nothing wrong with how it's mounted on there, but just that little sag, maybe it's my OCD kicking in, but I don't like the way that this is uneven. It kind of slopes down a little bit, and well, it's because it's not meant to go on this table. But I'm going to cut that piece, glue it in, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done that. And that looks a lot better to me. I like the way it sits a lot better now. It's much more square to the cabinet, and I'm happy with that. So I guess there's nothing left to do but to slide it into its permanent home here in my shop and fill her up. And there you have it, a router table cabinet. I've been wanting to do this for a while, guys. Ever since I got my JessEm router table, I've been tired of seeing all of my stuff underneath in totes. All of my different handheld routers, my router bits over in a different cabinet, instead of being with my router where they belong. The time is long past for me to get a proper router table cabinet, and through the thought process of what to do, as I said in part one, I realized that I shouldn't be trying to fix what isn't broken. And with my old table, the one with my Freud router in it, I loved that cabinet. It housed everything I owned, and there was still plenty of room, and I absolutely loved everything about it. The only thing that I didn't really like about it was the fact that I had to continually open and close, open and close, open and close all of the router bit trays to try to find the bit. But now that I have the card holders or the card frames on the front, I can label each one to give me a rough idea of what it is that I'm looking at and a rough idea of where to find the bits. Of course, your usually or your regularly used bits, you always know where they are because you're continually going to that drawer. But sometimes there's some of the specialty bits that you may not quite remember where it is that you've stored them. Now, the difference between this and my old one, other than, of course, the finger pulls for the router bit trays, is the size. It is the same width as my old one, but it's 4 inches deeper to accommodate the larger JessEm table. There's also that issue about the crank for raising and lowering in my router lift. And that took some real careful measuring and some real careful drilling and that sort of thing in order to get it to work properly and fit properly in the cabinet. So if you're making it to go with a router top table that you already have, just make sure that you're taking the measurements and making sure that everything is going to fit the way that you want it to. Because the last thing that you'd want to do is spend all that time on the cabinet only to find out that your router tabletop doesn't fit. Case in point, if you remember in part one, I said that my original thought was I was going to use the original rails that mount it onto the tubular stand for the JessEm router, and I was going to use those to mount it to mine, but the design did not allow for that, and somewhere in my thought process I lost track of that, and I had to get rid of those rails that were around the JessEm tabletop. That phenolic resin does not like being drilled and screwed into, so I wanted to use existing mountings wherever possible, and I was able to do that with custom L brackets or angle brackets that I could fasten it down to my table that I built or the cabinet that I built. It just took some modification. Now, I don't want to pretend not for 1 second that this is my design, because it's not. This actually came out of a book, and a book that I've had for a very long time and that I've gotten quite a few ideas from, and I've made quite a few things, and that is called Smart Workshop Solutions, and it is by Paul Anthony. It is an absolute, it's just a fantastic book. I really enjoy it. It has everything from drill holders to blade cabinets, lumber racks, clamp racks, the router table, drill press tables, you name it, it's pretty much in this book, and it's served me well over the years. So I'll be sure that I post a link for that book down below, and if you're interested, maybe you can pick one up for yourself or check your local library because they may have it as well. Either way, guys, a router cabinet with your table is a great way to organize and store all of your stuff, and it's a worthwhile project looking into, and I hope that this series has inspired you to make your own. Guys, I can't tell you how much fun this has been, even with some of the problems that I had with having to customize the cabinet due to mountings not working. I cut some plywood wrong and ended up having it so it was too small to use, and then had to go pick up a new sheet of plywood. But that's okay, because the offcuts I ended up using for things like drawer bottoms or sides and that sort of thing. So all in all, there was very little waste. it's a worthwhile project that teaches a lot of things to the beginner in woodworker. It teaches cabinet making, using dados, checking your carcass for square, getting help with glue ups, the whole 9 yards, all the prep work of drawing your lines to be able to fire your nails straight so that you're not missing and having them deflect through your shelves. There's a whole lot of processes here that a lot of us take for granted, and we know automatically what to do because we've been doing it for this long. But honestly, this is a project that if you don't have a cabinet for your router table, this is one you may want to consider. Guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you don't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. I hope you've enjoyed this series. I hope you found it informative. I hope you're going to try it for yourself because this thing is awesome. And I honestly hope that you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.